This episode of Rick and Rick Rule the World is brought to you by Taskin, the first name in ultra-stylish, premium quality travel gear, like the exquisitely designed Taskin One expandable backpack. With 9 practical variations, the Taskin One is always the right size for wherever life takes you next. Save 30% on your next purchase when you use the promo code R&R Take 30. That's R&R Take 30 at taskinsf.com.
Next up, set your phasers to stunned as we celebrate nearly 60 years of Star Trek. That's right, September marked the 58th anniversary of the premiere episode of Star Trek, the original series. I'm Rick Matheson, and you're just in time for the year's final between seasons episode of Rick and Rick Rule the World. And first up, we share more from our conversation with Kurt Ho and Eric V about San Diego ComicCon 2024, where the sci-fi franchise that has lived long and prospered took to the Hall H stage to celebrate its past, present, and near-term future. Then we hit rewind on a 2022 episode where the Ricks discuss how Star Trek never would have existed had it not been for a little red-headed comedian named Lucille Ball. Enjoy. There was Star Trek. It seems like lately they've been like second only to Marvel in sort of the excitement, but they did this whole thing with all the casts of Star Trek Lower Decks, which I think is going into its last season, right?
Yeah,
and that's one everyone's saying that. It should really go on. I think this is going to be the 5th season. Everyone's going, it deserves at least a 6th season. It's a good show. Discovery, which that's ending this year too, but they're doing a spin-off with some other characters from Discovery and the Doctor from Voyager called Starfleet Academy.
Right.
Did you guys see this?
I heard about it, and so the EMH emergency medical hologram. Yeah, we'll see. I was interested until I heard that a bunch of the cast is going to be transferred from Discovery, so I'm like, I guess we'll see. We'll see how the writing goes.
Yeah. They also did a preview of Section 31, which I guess was going to be a series, but now it's going to be a streaming movie. This is Michelle Yeoh, who played George, but I think she's playing her mirror universe evil twin, who's helping Starfleet out in this movie, and it looks pretty good. She's always great. I mean, she won the Academy Award for, was it last year or year before, for Everything Everywhere All at Once. And then my own personal favorite, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I can report that the intermixed chamber and containment fields are stable. I'll get to the warp core and assess its state when I'm able.
That's awesome.
Apologies, the most confounding thing. I appear to be singing. Most unusual, so peculiar. My apologies, everyone. If I hadn't earned my geekdom bona fides before that, I just did, I think.
Yep.
I've liked Next Generation. I've liked other ones, but this one feels the most like Star Trek. And it's a great cast, and the song I was just singing is, I think, the second to last, so the penultimate episode of season 2. They did a musical, and it all made sense. It wasn't
there was a lot of fear going into that one, by the way, because I did not know how they were going to pull that off, and I was just dreading it. And then when it happened, it was like, whoa, it was really good.
When it came on, I didn't know it was coming, and I was like, what the and then it sucked me in. It was fantastic. Half the songs are crap, but the other half of the songs are brilliant and so clever and creative.
Right. And no spoilers. Nobody's saying anything about the Klingons.
Right.
They also said no more musicals.
Oh, well, that's fair.
Not for this next season, but they take other chances. And, I remember last season they also had the crossover with Lower Deck. So they took some really good chances, and it's written by people who love Star Trek and really know Star Trek, and people who are willing to take those risks to tell a unique story.
So, folks, if you're not familiar with the show, it is the crew of the Enterprise under Captain Christopher Pike in the decade before Kirk becomes captain. And there are many characters from the original series, including Uhura, Nurse Chapel, Spock, and we met Scotty this season, and we've met a young James T. Kirk. And what they do so brilliantly is they've clearly gone back through the show and picked out little elements that were kind of hinted at in the original series and blown them up into full backstories and made these characters come to life. Folks, it's on Paramount Plus. 3rd season's coming out. First 2 seasons are on Netflix.
And what I love about it is they're not just focused on the original characters. They take the periphery characters. You got Pike, you got Christine Chapel, you got number one, Una. And it takes these periphery characters and they build so much depth and character and richness in their stories. That's what makes the show new and fresh, because you're not just following James T. Kirk or, the young Scotty or the young Uhura, and even Dr. M'benga.
M'benga, yeah.
Yeah, and it's these periphery characters that are now the stars of the show.
When we get back from the short break, the Ricks pull the slingshot maneuver to revisit Earth in the year 2022 and an episode about the surprising origins of Star Trek. Missing that? Well, it'd be highly illogical, so don't go anywhere. Hey, Rick and Rick Nation, don't forget to check out our website at rickandrick.com. It's double the Rick in just one click at rickandrick.com. And we are back. Rick Matheson here with excerpts from a 2022 episode of Rick and Rick that generated a lot of buzz with listeners who didn't know about just how close things were from Star Trek never coming to a TV near you. A lot of younger listeners might not be aware of the fact that some of our favorite properties like Star Trek and the Mission Impossible franchise, everything that they are in sci-fi and the movies and whatnot, we owe to a little old redheaded lady named Lucille Ball for these shows ever existing in the first place. Yeah. It's a fascinating story.
Yeah. This was posted by somebody who goes by the handle of Acid Test 1967. And the story, I think, was a clip from another website. And it was really interesting because it's one of those things where you hear bits and pieces of it, but it was put together really nicely. And he was talking about how in 1964, Lucille Ball was the sole owner of Desi Lou's Studios. And that was the first ever woman-run major Hollywood studio, right?
Yeah, in 1964.
1964. And so the people were coming in pitching stuff. And she had two ambitious writers come in that were, developing some stories. There was Gene Roddenberry with Star Trek and Bruce Geller with Mission Impossible. And so she was in talks with CBS and NBC and I'm sure others to try and sell these two. And in long story short, I think Mission Impossible got picked up, but Star Trek kind of hadn't, and they were trying to figure it out. And everybody on her board of directors voted against Star Trek and said, look, let's focus on the other ones. And let's not focus on this one.
She was the one who really believed in it and said, no, let's give it a shot.
That's right. That was 1966. And she overrode them, convinced them to do it. And then the rest is history. And if you think about it, Star Trek, it is one of the largest creative stories ever. It spawned movies, comic books, cult fanatics,
animation, everything.
Yeah, exactly. And we all owe that to Lucille Ball, a redheaded comedian who was basically a slapstick comedian back in the 1960s.
Yeah, for younger listeners, Lucille Ball was the star of I Love Lucy in the early 1950s with her husband, Desi Arnaz. Well, this was a interracial couple on TV. That was unheard of. In fact, CBS, they were picking it up. It was a version of a radio show that she'd been on for years. They wanted her to do a TV series, new medium, and she insisted on it being opposite her husband, who was a Cuban-American band leader. And they're like, are you crazy? And so they went around the U.S. to do shows together in the characters of Ricky and Lucy Ricardo. And audiences loved them. And so CBS, their execs went out to these shows and was like, this is great. Everybody loves them. And so they started the show, which took America by storm. People did not miss this TV show. Well, it ran for, I don't know what it was, 6 years or whatever. Their relationship was a bit rocky, and Lucille Ball ended up divorcing Desi Arnaz, and she bought him out of the studio. And so she became the first woman running what had quickly become a major U.S. studio with tons of shows on TV, which was a booming market. And she was still doing a show at the time, Rick. So she's the head of the studio, and she had a show where she's single called The Lucy Show that was running at the same time, and then another show with her kids in the late 60s.
Here's Lucy,
yeah. And so this is where she's running a studio. And Star Trek, the pilot was shot, and the rest of her board's like, the word they used was, it's too cerebral. And she said, we should still give it a shot. So they started over. They recast some of the parts. And then, like you said, the rest is history.
Yeah.
Together, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz in particular, created what we know of as the TV sitcom. At that time, in the 1950s, things were broadcast live. Like if you were watching a show, the actors were doing it right then. They'd do a show for the East Coast and then another for the West Coast. And they wanted to be able to do the show once. And there was a technology that recorded. All these shows were getting recorded, but it looked terrible. And so he created the whole thing around videotape and the 3-camera setup for shows. No one had done shows like this before. He just kind of said, what if we did it where it was 3 cameras and a live audience, where the audience that you hear laughing is actually laughing. Right. They invented all this stuff, including the syndication market that enabled shows like I Love Lucy and eventually Star Trek to live on and gain larger audiences in continuous repeats. And so amazing story. And that's just a little taste of it. But anyway, yeah, Star Trek wouldn't have happened without her.
That's true. Now, I can't remember if I've ever seen that first episode. Have you seen it, The Cage?
Oh, yes, you probably have. So what they did is, partially to save money, they did a 2-part episode where we learned that Captain Pike is on trial. So what they do is they show that episode as a flashback, which is called The Menagerie, Part 1 and Part 2. It's a good episode, works much better belonging to the universe that was ultimately created for Star Trek.
That's awesome.
Damn it, Rick, I'm a marketer, not a Klingon barbershop quartet. So be sure to tune your tricorder for our next episode, because it's the season 6 premiere of the one show where everybody's name is Rick.
And everybody rules the world.